this video we're going to look at parallel and perpendicular lines, and we're going to actually look at how to tell the difference between the two. So let's start with this. So the main difference between parallel and perpendicular lines are the slopes. Okay, so when we look at the slopes, and actually let me rewrite this because that was a little sloppy. So the slopes of parallel lines are actually the exact same. So you know lines are parallel if they have the same slope. So slopes, if they're the same, they are parallel, or the lines are parallel. Now, the opposite is true for perpendicular. They're not the same, but they're actually going to be opposite reciprocals. Or I'll give you another way that you may hear this. So opposite reciprocals. All right. Now, opposite just means that the sign flips. So sign flips. And then reciprocal, we know that the fraction flips. So fraction flips. So if you see slopes that are the exact same, that means the lines are parallel. If you see slopes that are opposite reciprocals, or one last word you could hear the word negative. So some people say negative reciprocals, which essentially means the same thing. So if you see signs that are opposite and then the fractions are actually flipped, that means those lines are perpendicular. So let's look at a few just to start off. So let's say we'll actually start off with a couple easy ones. Let's say I have y equals negative 2x plus 1. That's my first line. And then my second line is y equals negative 1 half x minus 8. All right, now here's what we're checking for, and here's what the question would say. The question would say, are these lines parallel? Are they perpendicular? Just put a comma. Are they perpendicular, or are they just neither? So they could be neither one of those. So let's just look. So here's what we're looking for once again. We're looking at the slopes. So remember, if you have y equals mx plus b, the slope is this m value. So m for the first equation is negative 2. For the second equation, it's negative 1 half. Now, obviously those are not the same. So first of all, parallel is out. But it could be that these are perpendicular if they are opposite reciprocals. And once again, opposite reciprocal just means that to go from one, like let's start with negative 2. The opposite reciprocal of negative 2 would be flipping this fraction. So 2 over 1 would flip to 1 over 2, but then we change this negative to a positive. So if these were opposite reciprocals, the opposite reciprocal of negative 2 would be 1 half. If you notice, my second slope is 1 half, but it's still negative, which means this is not perpendicular or parallel, so these would be neither. All right, let's look at a few more. Let's see. Let's look at, and these will actually get a little bit easier. So y equals 4 over 3x minus 7. The second equation is y equals 4 over 3x minus 3. Now, once again, we want to look at the slopes. So we want to find m for the first equation, that's 4 over 3. We want to find m for the second equation, that's 4 over 3. So if they are the same slope, that means they are parallel. So these two lines are parallel. Let's look at another one. Let's say we have let's say we have y equals, we'll say 5 over 3x plus 2. And then the other equation is y equals negative 3 over 5x minus 6. All right. So once again, we want to look at the slopes because it's going to ask you, are these parallel, are these perpendicular, or are they neither? All right. Now, when we look at this, once again, we're just focusing on each of these slopes. So here's the slopes of each of these lines. The first one is 5 over 3. The second one is negative 3 over 5. So an easy trick, we can obviously see they're not the same. So it's not parallel. An easy trick to see if something is perpendicular is just start with one of your slopes and do the opposite reciprocal. All right, so the opposite reciprocal of 5 over 3 would be, first of all, we'd flip this fraction to 3 over 5, but then we would make it negative. Now, if that opposite reciprocal is the slope of the other line, then that means they're perpendicular. And if you notice, the opposite reciprocal is the actual slope. So this would be perpendicular. Let's look at just a quick example. When you're doing these, it could be the case that your problem ends up like this, and I want to just do one real quick just so you are prepared for it. You could see negative 8 plus 8y equals 0, but then your other equation will be something like x minus y equals 4. Now, those are actually written in standard form. Well, not exactly, but close to it. Basically, these are not in y equals mx plus b form. So it's going to be hard for us to see the slopes with how these two are currently set up. So your job, if you get presented with a problem like this, and it asks you, once again, parallel, perpendicular, or neither, your job is to change both of these equations so that they are in y equals mx plus b form, or slope-intercept form. So let's do that real quick just so you can see what it looks like. So on this first equation, I'm going to say plus 8x plus 8x, 8y equals 8x, and then I'm going to divide by 8. Now, I'm going through this part a little bit quicker than maybe I usually would, but it's because I have another video that actually explains this converting. So if you want to, you can check that one out. All right, so now let's see, we're going to subtract x here, subtract x here. Negative y is equal to negative x plus 4, and then we need to divide by negative 1 to get that y by itself. And remember, when we do that division by negative 1 on the right side, it actually divides by both terms. So this would become x minus 4. Now, let's look at the slopes. We can't really see the slopes, but they're actually understood to be here. There's a 1 in front of x for our first equation and a 1 in front of x for our second equation. So actually, our slopes are the exact same. So these two lines are parallel. But once again, if your equations are not in y equals mx plus b form, it's your job to put them in y equals mx plus b form. Because once again, you can't tell the slope of a line when it's not in y equals mx plus b form or slope-intercept form. So once again, just a quick recap. Parallel lines have the same slope. So parallel, same slope. Perpendicular lines have opposite or negative reciprocal slopes. So the slopes will be opposite reciprocals.